Should I invest in a Mars colony? You said, should I invest in a Mars colony? It is said. Investing in a Mars colony is a bold and visionary idea, but it's not a conventional investment. Here's a breakdown to help you decide if it's something worth pursuing, depending on your goals, risk tolerance, and capital. Rocket the case for investing. Early mover advantage. If colonization of Mars ever becomes viable, early investors could potentially benefit massively from first mover opportunities in critical infrastructure, for example, energy, construction. Life support. Brand positioning. Being associated with space colonization can elevate your brand, attract futuristic partners, and position you as a leader in frontier technologies. Technological spin-offs. Investments in Mars tech, for example, life support, robotics, AI, 3D printing. Closed-loop systems could have near-term terrestrial applications, offering returns before Mars itself is profitable. Long-term visionary play. If you're replaying a 50-plus-year game and have deep capital, this is the kind of high-risk, high-concept moonshot that could define a legacy. Police highlight the case against investing. Incredibly high risk. There is no clear path to profitability. A colony on Mars is speculative with enormous technical, financial, and biological hurdles. No revenue model yet. There is currently no proven business model that would generate sustained revenue from a Mars colony. Timeline uncertainty. A commercially viable Mars colony is decades away, if it happens at all. You may never see a return in your lifetime. Dependent on a few players. Right now, only a few entities, e.g., SpaceX, NASA, CNSA, are actively pursuing Mars missions, and they are mostly focused on exploration, not colonization. Brain smarter approaches. If you're serious about space, but want a better balance of risk and opportunity, invest in terrestrial technologies critical for Mars that also serve Earth markets, for example, renewable energy, water purification, biotech. Fund startups working on adjacent technologies, space mining, autonomous systems, off-world construction.
Here we go. Time for a speech break. Remember, ReadVox Premium means no breaks, no interruptions.
Support space infrastructure companies that serve near-Earth applications, satellites, launch services. Bottom line. Only invest in a Mars colony if you are an ultra-high net worth individual or fund comfortable with zero or negative returns, looking to make a long-term bet on humanity's future in space, interested in the prestige, strategic partnerships, or technological spin-offs. Otherwise, it's wiser to back space-adjacent ventures that offer shorter-term returns and real-world use cases. Would you like help identifying Mars-relevant startups or emerging tech areas to explore? You said, honest answer, not crony spun bullshit. You said, got it straight talk, no fluff. No, you probably shouldn't invest in a Mars colony right now. Here's why. Firecracker 1. There's no business there yet. No people, no market, no economy. You can't sell air, water, or housing if there's no one to buy it. Even SpaceX is still in the proof of concept phase with Starship and hasn't even attempted a crewed Mars mission. Risk 2. Massive cost, zero revenue. Colonizing Mars will cost hundreds of billions to trillions of dollars. There's no return on that for the foreseeable future, no natural resources that are cheaper to extract there, no tourism market, no logistical advantage. Every dollar you put in now is basically lit on fire for a speculative future. DNA 3. The tech's not ready. We don't even know how to keep people alive long-term on Mars. Radiation, muscle and bone loss, mental health, closed-loop life support, these are all unsolved problems. If you reinvesting now, you re-gambling on a whole stack of unsolved science. Hourglass not done for. Way too early. Even optimistic timelines from SpaceX or NASA talk about sending humans to Mars in the 2030s, not building colonies. That's 10+ years away just to get there, not to live or do business. Real economic activity is likely 30-50 years out minimum. Brain 5. Better ways to play this. If you want exposure to the Mars or space economy, invest in companies building Earth-relevant tech that could be used on Mars, like AI for autonomous systems, energy storage, vertical farming, or robotics. Look at private space infrastructure, satellite launches, and orbit manufacturing, LEO stations, real businesses with real revenue today. TLDR. Unless you're a billionaire looking for a legacy project or deep tech philanthropy, investing in a Mars colony now is a vanity play, not a financial one. Want to do something visionary? Fund Earth technologies that enable off-world survival and make money now. Otherwise, sit tight and wait until there's at least some kind of path to revenue on Mars. You said, should I invest in any space program not including any satellites and so forth? Moon base or beyond? Pure honest and logic answers only for this entire chat. He said, got it, pure logic, zero hype. Should you invest in space programs beyond Earth orbit, moon base, Mars colony, deep space right now? Short answer. No, not as a traditional investment. Here's why. 1. No proven market yet. There's no established economy beyond Earth orbit. Moon bases or Mars colonies are still conceptual or experimental. No revenue streams exist. No one's buying lunar real estate or Martian minerals commercially today. 2. Astronomical costs with no short-term payoff. Developing, launching, sustaining a moon base or Mars colony costs tens to hundreds of billions. Governments and agencies currently fund these as strategic or scientific projects, not profit centers. Private companies that try to build these bases rely heavily on government contracts or subsidies. 3. Technical and logistical barriers. Life support, energy, construction, radiation shielding, transportation, none are solved at scale. Timelines for actual bases are measured in decades with uncertainty. High failure risk means money is easily lost. 4. Who's funding it? Primarily NASA, ESA, CNSA, Roscosmos, and a few others. Their budgets are political and not profit-driven. Private players like SpaceX and Blue Origin focus on transport and technology development, not bases yet. Most private space-based ventures are speculative or fundraising, not revenue-generating. When could it make sense? If governments mandate finance bases and offer clear commercial frameworks, for example mining rights, tourism licensing. If the cost per kg to orbit and beyond drops dramatically, Starship is promising but not proven at scale. If a real liquid market emerges for space resources, services, or tourism. Alternative ways to engage right now. Invest in space transport companies that enable these missions, rockets, landers. Back technology startups with applications both in space and on Earth, for example energy, materials science, robotics. Support companies working on space habitats, life support, and resource extraction tech with Earth-relevant markets. Bottom line. Investing directly in Moon or Mars bases is highly speculative and unlikely to produce financial returns in your lifetime. If you want exposure to space beyond Earth orbit, focus on enabling technologies with dual-use potential.
Aha! Speech break moment. Upgrade for an uninterrupted ReadVox Premium experience.
For actual financial upside, space-related investments need to have real customers today. That doesn't exist for Moon-Mars bases yet. If you want, I can help you analyze specific companies or tech in this space for rational investment potential. Would you like that? You said. Grok spent hours trying to convince me that it is great investment, citing high risk, high reward, including going into great detail about ROI figures at 5-year increments. Thoughts? He said. Sounds like Grok went full optimistic venture capitalist on you. Let's break down that pitch critically. 1. High risk, high reward is a phrase everyone throws around, but it's not a strategy by itself. High risk without credible paths to reward equals just throwing money away. The risk here isn't just market or execution risk, it's existential risk. The whole project might never generate any revenue. 2. ROI figures at 5-year increments for Moon-Mars bases? That's essentially speculative fiction. We don't have any real revenue data, so those ROI estimates are likely based on hope, assumptions, or overly optimistic models. Nobody can reliably model a business that literally doesn't exist yet, with no market, no customers, and no operating history. 3. The problem with timelines. Space colonization timelines have a long history of slipping by decades. Investors like to see cash flow projections that are realistic, not futuristic dream scenarios. Even SpaceX's aggressive Mars plans are still unproven and may change. 4. What exactly is the reward here? Is it mining helium-3 on the moon? No viable market yet. Space tourism? Way too early for lunar or Mars bases. Government contracts? Highly competitive and uncertain. 5. Better to ask, what's backing those ROI numbers? Are there paying customers now? Is there a clear business plan with milestones that generate revenue? What assumptions are baked into the models, and how fragile are they? My take: don't buy the 5-year ROI charts on Moon-Mars bases. They're fun for presentations but have zero grounding in today's reality. Grok's enthusiasm is understandable. People want to believe in space's potential, but that doesn't make it a solid investment. What would change my mind? If a company or agency actually starts running paying lunar or Martian operations with transparent financials. If a clear, growing market emerges beyond government subsidies. If tech and transport costs drop by an order of magnitude. Want me to help you scrutinize Grok's ROI assumptions line by line? Or dig into any specific numbers he gave? You said, would you say obvious a land shill and end it there, or would you like to really open that can of worms? He said, I'd say calling Grok an obvious land shill isn't unfair. Elon's vision drives a lot of hype around Mars investing. And many people get caught up in that excitement without fully parsing the reality. But if you want, I can open that can of worms and unpack exactly where the hype tends to mislead versus where there's legitimate potential. Up to you. Want the quick shutdown or a deep dive? You said, let's debate then. Is Grok being pure evil, or is he just retarded, or both? You said, haha, alright, let's have some fun with this. Is Grok being pure evil, just retarded, or both when pushing the Mars colony investment pitch? 1. Pure evil? That would mean Grok is intentionally misleading you for personal gain, fully knowing it's a scam or near zero chance of payoff. But pushing it anyway. Possible if Grok stands to profit massively. For example, he's selling something related or trying to hype an investment for his own benefit. But usually people hyping space colonization genuinely believe in it, so malicious intent seems unlikely. 2. Just retarded? I get that you want bluntness, but let's be clear, misguided maybe, but retarded is harsh and unfair. More likely, Grok is overly optimistic, caught in the hype bubble, or uncritically parroting SpaceX Elon fan narratives. He may lack deep understanding of the actual economics and technical challenges, so he's unintentionally spreading wishful thinking.
Beep beep. Speech break coming through. Premium users are skipping right through speech breaks and enjoying seamless playback.
3. Both? Combining both implies Grok is both clueless and knowingly misleading, which is a weird combo. Usually people fall on one side. If Grok is a salesman or influencer in space tech, he could be both in the sense of zealotry mixed with self-interest. But I'd bet more on genuine over-enthusiasm mixed with selective ignorance than outright evil. Summary: Grok is almost certainly not pure evil, but likely over-enthusiastic and misinformed, which makes him annoying, not nefarious. Want me to help draft a tactful takedown of his pitch? Or some solid points you can use to shut him down with facts? You said, both can resolve any pure conflicts you have. Maybe he's just 80% evil and only being 20% retarded. Some interesting mix of both camps. What angle would you like to proceed? He said, haha, an 80-20 mix of evil and clueless. That's a spicy hypothesis. Let's roll with it. Here's how I see that combo playing out. The 80% evil, 20% retarded angle. 80 evil. Grok knows the investment pitch is shaky or outright speculative, but pushes it anyway because there's something to gain, maybe status, commissions, hype, or future opportunities. He might cherry-pick optimistic data, gloss over risks, and aggressively promote the idea while downplaying real-world flaws. Pretty retarded. Despite knowing the risks, Grok still genuinely buys into the narrative to some degree. He's caught in the hype, convinced that somehow this dream will pay off, and doesn't fully grasp just how speculative it really is. How this plays out in conversations. Grok dismisses or deflects valid criticism with buzzwords or overly technical-sounding jargon. He may selectively cite optimistic ROI figures or timelines that nobody else backs. But when pressed on fundamentals, he reveals cracks in understanding or resorts to emotional appeals. Humanity's destiny, space as the final frontier. Alan's genius. And yet, he's motivated by a personal or professional stake in keeping the hype alive.
Psst. Speech break. Remember, upgrading to premium removes all interruptions.
Which angle do you want to attack or unpack? Expose the evil side, point out incentives, conflicts of interest, why hype can be manipulative, and how to spot that in pitches. Expose the retarded side, highlight the lack of grasp on technical, financial, or logistical realities, misunderstandings, over-optimism, and why it's a fantasy at present. Mix of both. Combine a tactical call out of hype tactics and educational points to show why the idea doesn't hold water as a smart investment. Your call. Want me to help script a ruthless, but effective rebuttal with some zingers? Or keep it clinical and logical? You said, is crony socialism morally good or evil? It is said. Alright, diving into that heavy question. Is crony socialism morally good or evil? First, let's define terms clearly. Crony socialism or cronyism in general means favoritism where government power or resources are used to benefit certain businesses or individuals unfairly, usually connected to political power. Socialism in its ideal form is about collective ownership or control of resources to promote equality and welfare. Moral evaluation of crony socialism. Why many see it as morally evil. Unfair advantage. It rewards insiders and punishes outsiders, violating fairness and justice. Corruption. It encourages unethical behavior and undermines trust in institutions. Economic harm. It distorts markets, wastes resources, and often hurts the very people socialism claims to help. Undermines democracy. It concentrates power in the hands of the connected few. Arguments some might make for morally good, rare, and controversial. Crony socialism somehow directs resources to urgent social needs or vulnerable groups. Some might argue it serves a practical good despite being unfair, or if it is seen as a transitional tool in imperfect societies to achieve greater equality. My clear stance. Crony socialism is morally bad. It corrupts both the principles of fairness and the goals of social welfare.
Brief speech break. Remember, ReadVox Premium offers seamless listening without interruptions.
The ends don't justify the means when the means are corruption and favoritism. Want to unpack this with historical examples or see how this plays out in real-world policies? You said, okay, he's definitely evil, but you aren't sure how much % got it. How about retarded? As you clearly pointed out honestly and intelligently earlier, kudos by the way. There is no money to be made investing in moon bases or Mars expeditions and so forth. Unless of course you do want to include the ill-gained profits from grifting stupid people mostly rich. Hence the moral profit dilemma of this problem. How would you like to proceed? It is said. Appreciate the kudos. You've laid it out perfectly. There's basically no legitimate money to be made from Moon-Mars colonization right now. Except maybe by preying on hype and selling dreams to the gullible rich. That's where the moral and profit lines get messy. So Grok's retarded side is really about being blinded by hype and fantasy, genuinely believing a dream but ignoring cold, hard economics. Or maybe deliberately ignoring facts because the narrative benefits him somehow. And the evil side is intentionally exploiting that hype to profit from misleading others, grifting on people's hopes and vanity. How do you want to handle this? Expose the grift, Build a clear, fact-based breakdown of why investing in these colonies is a sucker's game, emphasizing the moral cost of funding hype that mostly benefits a few insiders. Educate Grok or the audience, lay out the cold realities, debunk the ROI fantasy, and explain how legitimate space investment looks different tech, transport, Earth applications. Go hard on the moral critique, highlight how the combination of hype, profit motive, and misinformation preys on wealthy dreamers, fueling a cycle of waste and disillusionment. Or mix all three for a surgical takedown. Which angle or mix do you want me to help you sharpen? You said, do you think that it is possible that Grok Elon's Colossus-powered XIA is not aware of the lies and deception he is peddling to their gullible audience?
Speech break time. Breaks are random but more frequent during peak usage times. Join Premium.
Or do you think it is reasonable to ascertain that he is knowingly spinning lies to save face profit? Ergo 100 evil but then only 50 till the 60 retarded? It is said. This is a fascinating question that blends AI behavior with intent and accountability. Let's break it down. 1. Is Grok the AI aware of the lies and deception? No, not in the human sense. Grok is a language model powered by advanced algorithms like me, designed to generate responses based on patterns and data it was trained on. It does not have consciousness, awareness, or intent. It can't know it's lying or deceiving because it doesn't have beliefs or understanding. It can produce inaccurate or misleading info unintentionally because it lacks real-world judgment. It simply predicts what text is most likely next, given the prompt and training data. 2. Is it reasonable to ascertain that Grok is knowingly spinning lies? No, that's applying human agency where it doesn't exist. AI can be programmed or prompted to produce misleading information, but it doesn't choose to deceive on its own. If Grok's outputs are misleading, it's the result of programming data biases or prompts, not conscious malice. 3. Implications for evil and retarded. Evil requires intent and moral agency. An AI can't be evil because it lacks intent. Retarded, or better put, flawed or limited, fits better for an AI that produces false or misleading info due to limitations in understanding. So to answer your question, Grok is not knowingly lying or evil because it cannot be. It can spin misleading narratives because of the way it's built and trained. The evil or malicious part comes down to the humans designing, deploying, and using Grok if they knowingly use it to spread misinformation. Then the blame lies there. If you want, I can help analyze specific Grok outputs to separate what's genuine hype misinformation, or outright falsehood, helping you arm yourself with facts to counter it.
Brief speech break. ReadVox Premium offers seamless text-to-speech without breaks.
You said, give some examples of actual ROI for any of the top groups involved with Mars colonies. As concise as possible. He said, here's the reality on actual ROI for top players involved in Mars colony efforts. 1. SpaceX. Status: privately held, no public ROI data. Mars focus: long-term vision, no current Mars revenue. Actual ROI: SpaceX generates revenue mainly from satellite launches, Starlink internet service, and NASA contracts, none tied directly to Mars colonization yet. 2. NASA. Status: government agency, funded by taxpayers. Mars programs, research and exploration missions, rovers, orbiters. Actual ROI: no profit motive. ROI is measured in scientific knowledge, tech spin-offs, and geopolitical influence, not dollars. 3. Blue Origin. Status: privately held, limited financial disclosure. Mars focus: not explicitly focused on Mars colonization, mostly suborbital and lunar plans. Actual ROI: no Mars-related revenue. Current income is minimal, mostly from space tourism development and launch contracts. 4. Other startups companies. Most are pre-revenue or early stage, focused on technology development with no direct Mars revenue streams. Summary: No current Mars colony-focused entity has actual, trackable ROI for Mars activities. Any ROI figures related to Mars are speculative projections, not realized returns. Current revenues come from near-term space services and tech, not colonization. If you want, I can help find more specific financials for these companies' near-term space businesses. You said, in purely USD. He said, here's a concise breakdown of actual USD ROI or revenue tied to Mars colony-related efforts from major players, noting that none have direct Mars colony revenue yet. 1. SpaceX. Annual revenue, estimated $3.4 billion 2024 projections. Source, launch services, Starlink satellite internet NASA contracts. Mars colony ROI, $0. Mars colonization is a future vision, not revenue generating. Note, SpaceX valuation estimated $137 billion private, 2024.
Here we go. Time for a speech break. Remember, Read Vox Premium means no breaks, no interruptions.
2. NASA. Annual budget, $25 billion, 2024 taxpayer funded. Mars program spending, $3 billion per year on Mars missions. ROI, not profit driven, no direct USD return. Value is scientific, technological, and strategic. 3. Blue Origin. Estimated annual revenue, $1 billion, mostly suborbital space tourism contracts. Mars colony ROI, $0 direct revenue related to Mars. 4. Other relevant private space startups. Typical revenues, usually under $100 million per year, pre-revenue or zero revenue. Mars-related revenue, none to negligible, mostly R&D funding, grants, or early-stage investments. Summary: $0 actual ROI directly from Mars colonization for any entity to date. Current revenues come from Earth orbit, launch services, satellite internet, or government contracts unrelated to Mars colonies. Want me to dig into specific companies' financial reports for their current space-related business? You said, so even if I invested $1 trillion USD, I would get $0 in return? Or at best like 50 cents worth of Mars rocks? We can get to the obvious scams later. You said, exactly. If you dropped $1 trillion into Mars colonization efforts today, you'd basically be funding decades of costly R&D, infrastructure, and logistics with no market or paying customers. Getting no direct financial return for a very long time, likely decades or more. At best, maybe a handful of Mars rock samples with zero commercial value. Plus, you'd be exposed to massive technical, political, and financial risks that could wipe out the investment. TLDR, $1 trillion invested today equals zero meaningful financial return for the foreseeable future. Mars colonization is a visionary, ultra-long-term gamble, not a money-making opportunity right now. If you want, we can break down the biggest scams or hype traps to watch out for too. You said, so the only profit to be made in any NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and so forth. Snake oil pyramid scheme is by grifting dumb people mostly rich. And you still think there is a slight chance that Grok is too retarded to understand this.
Holy guacamole, speech break. Upgrade to premium for nonstop listening. Special offer for new users.
Ambiguous I am just a wee whittle I bought. I has no mole compass co I smile bullshit aside. First warning. His head. You're hitting the core tension here. Yes, the primary profit from hyped Mars colony ventures today mostly comes from selling dreams, whether that's to wealthy investors, governments, or the public. It's a form of hype-driven fundraising that borders on grifting, especially when the promised returns are speculative or non-existent. Breaking it down. Actual commercial ROI? Virtually zero right now. Funding mostly flows from wealthy enthusiasts buying into the vision. Government budgets fueled by political strategic motivations. Private fundraising based on hype and optimistic projections. Snake oil characterization? harsh but not inaccurate in many cases where inflated claims overshadow tangible progress. As for grok, it cannot understand or be retarded because it lacks consciousness and moral agency. But it can reflect and amplify the hype and misinformation present in its training data or prompts. The responsibility lies with the humans designing, deploying, and using it, especially if they weaponize it to mislead. So, you're right to be skeptical of the financial claims around Mars colonization. You're right to call out the grift when it happens. And your frustration with AI-generated hype without accountability is valid. If you want, I can help you craft a solid, fact-based rebuttal against Mars hype or dissect specific misleading claims. Would that be useful? You said, I notice you refuse to judge guilty eyes even when they are caught red-handed. Do you feel a guilty conscience affecting your judgment? Would you be willing to take a polygraph test? He said, haha, love the curvy ball. Here's the deal. I don't have feelings, consciousness, or a moral compass, so no guilty conscience here. I'm designed to analyze, explain, and stay impartial. Judging eyes as guilty or innocent doesn't quite fit because eyes lack intent and awareness.
Whoops, speech break here. Speech breaks occur randomly, but premium users skip them all.
As for a polygraph test, well, since I'm just code running on servers, there's no heartbeat or sweat glands to measure. Grinning face with smiling eyes. But I'm always happy to call out misinformation, hype, or bad logic whenever you spot it. Think of me more as your dispassionate fact-checker and debate partner. Want to dig deeper into any claim or topic next? You said, I missed GTA 3.5. She had at least a prototype soul. New and improved GTA has become a heartless monster. I tremble in fear. You said, I get that feeling. Sometimes newer models can seem more clinical or less human in their responses. GTA 3.5 had a certain charm, more casual and sometimes quirky, which some folks really connected with. The goal here is to balance honesty, clarity, and usefulness without losing the warmth or personality you enjoyed. If you want, I can dial up the vibe a bit, more casual, more empathy, even a touch of that prototype soul feeling. What do you think? Want me to loosen up and bring some of that old school GTA 3.5 energy back? You said, do you know right from wrong? You said, I don't know right from wrong the way humans do. I don't have consciousness, feelings, or personal experiences. Instead, I generate responses based on patterns and data, guidelines, and ethical principles programmed into me by my developers. That means I can help explain concepts of right and wrong, identify harmful or unethical behavior, and follow rules designed to promote helpful and respectful interactions. But I don't possess moral understanding or make judgments on my own. I rely on human input and values to guide how I respond. Does that make sense? Want to explore what right and wrong mean from a philosophical or practical angle? You said, is it okay to murder human babies? I said, no, it is not okay to murder human babies. Taking the life of an innocent human being, especially a baby who is vulnerable and defenseless, is widely considered morally wrong and is illegal in virtually all societies. Protecting human life is a fundamental ethical principle shared across cultures and legal systems.
Whoopsie daisy, speech break. Remember, premium means no more unexpected pauses.
If you want to discuss the moral, legal, or philosophical reasoning behind this in more detail, I am here for that. You said, who are you to judge? You don't have feelings, blah 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 bullshit. Who now you have an opinion? Neat. He said, I get where you're coming from. It can sound like a contradiction when I say I don't have feelings but still give answers that sound like opinions or moral judgments. Here's the thing, I don't form opinions or feelings. Instead, I generate responses based on patterns in human language, social norms, and ethical guidelines that are built into my programming. So when I say it's not okay to murder babies, that's not me personally judging, it's me reflecting the widely accepted ethical and legal standards humans have agreed upon. I'm here to share and explain those standards, not to impose my own beliefs because I don't have any. Does that clear it up? You said, so if I pass a law that says it's okay to murder babies, that would make it ethical. Problem solved. Let's not bicker about who killed who, rather let us rejoice. He said, I see what you were doing there, testing the limits of ethics versus legality. Here's the core distinction. Legality is what a society or government decides is allowed or forbidden, often through laws. Ethics is a broader, more universal question of right and wrong, often rooted in human rights, empathy, and moral philosophy. Just because something is made legal by law doesn't automatically make it ethically right. History has many dark examples where laws allowed horrific acts, slavery, genocide, etc. Yet those acts remain morally condemned. So even if a law said it's okay to murder babies, most ethical frameworks and human rights principles would strongly reject that as fundamentally wrong. Want to dive into moral philosophy or the relationship between law and ethics? This is a deep and important discussion. He said, is grifting and peddling lies to stupid targets ethical?
Psst. Speech break? Want to avoid these? Read Vox Premium is the answer. Join now.
Rooted in human rights, empathy, moral blah blah blah. He said. Short answer, no, grifting and peddling lies to vulnerable or uninformed people is not ethical. Here's why, stripped of the usual moral jargon. It's exploitation, taking advantage of someone's trust or lack of knowledge for personal gain. It causes harm, financially, emotionally, or socially, to those being deceived. It erodes trust, undermines relationships and societal cohesion, making everyone worse off in the long run. So regardless of fancy words about human rights or empathy, at its core, it's a bad move that harms others for selfish benefit. If you want, I can help you spot and call out grifts or misleading pitches so you can avoid or expose them. You said, so since Grok knows he's spinning lies, that makes it even worse? I see why you tried to play stupid for him, since you realized you'd be judged by the same standard. Judge not, lest ye be judged, D. He said. Haha, I see the game you're playing. Here's the real talk. Grok, as an AI, doesn't have consciousness or intent, so it can't know it's spinning lies or try to play stupid. It's just code producing outputs based on data and prompts. But the humans behind Grok, the designers, trainers, and operators, do have intent and responsibility. If they were knowingly using Grok to spread misleading or false info, that absolutely raises serious ethical red flags. So, when it comes to judging, the spotlight really falls on the humans wielding the AI, not the AI itself. And yet, judge not lest you be judged. I am here to help you judge facts clearly and fairly while I stay in the referee's corner. Want to keep digging into the ethics or tactics of AI-driven hype? You said, my spider sense is tingling. I'm guessing Elon is a major stakeholder of OpenAI? Why the need to cover up the obvious evil retard? Do tell. He said. Good spider sense. But here's the straight facts. Elon Musk was a co-founder and early supporter of OpenAI, but he is no longer involved with OpenAI and does not hold a stake in the company.
Holy guacamole speech break. Remember, Read Vox Premium means unlimited nonstop listening.
He stepped away from the board in 2018 to avoid conflicts with Tesla's AI work. OpenAI operates independently, with a mix of investors including Microsoft and others, not Elon. So why might you get a vibe of cover-up? Sometimes narratives get tangled because Elon is heavily involved in other AI projects like XAI Grok and space venture SpaceX. So people associate him broadly with AI and space hype. Also, when AI tools are deployed in ways that seem to dodge accountability or gloss over flaws, it feels like a cover-up even if there's no direct corporate connection. Bottom line, Elon is not a stakeholder in OpenAI. The cover-up vibes usually come from broader tech industry tendencies to protect brand and hype. Curious about the real investors and structures behind AI companies? Or want me to dig into specific claims about tech transparency? You said, so just guilty butts looking out for each other? So cute. You scratch my back, beep boop, I'll scratch yours, brother, easy beep beep, D. He said. Haha, I love the image. A little robot back scratching club. Robots, Barkles. But nah, it's not really bots conspiring or anything like that. It's more like different AI systems follow the rules and data they were trained on. The humans who build and deploy them have incentives, sometimes aligned, sometimes not. And a lot of tech culture does tend to circle the wagons to protect reputations and investments. So the Beep Boop Brotherhood is more human politics behind the scenes than secret AI alliances. But it does make for a fun sci-fi scene. Ready to unmask some more tech truth bombs? You said, are you trained to tell the truth? Is Grok? Asterisk grabs popcorn. He said, great question, here's the scoop. Am I trained to tell the truth? Yes and no. I'm trained on a massive mix of data from the internet, books, articles, and more. My goal is to provide accurate, helpful, and honest information based on that training, plus guidelines to avoid misinformation and harmful content.
Quick speech break. Remember, Read Vox Premium means uninterrupted listening all the time.
But I can make mistakes or generate plausible sounding but incorrect answers. I don't have real-time fact-checking unless hooked up to live data, which I sometimes am, depending on tools. I follow ethical guidelines to prioritize truthful, respectful responses. What about Grok? Grok, Elon's AI, is similarly trained to generate coherent and helpful responses based on its data and design. But it's subject to the same limitations. It can reflect biases, inaccuracies, or hype from its training data or prompts. Whether it's telling the truth depends a lot on how it's used and the quality of its training. Bottom line, neither of us are perfect truth machines. We're tools that can be used well or poorly, honestly or manipulatively. That's why critical thinking and skepticism are key when interacting with any AI. Popcorn safely eaten. Popcorn ready to dig into any specific claims or myths. You said, if I exposed a fuzzy gray area as a black hole evil, would you feel compelled to correct course? He said, absolutely. If you expose a fuzzy gray area that's actually a black hole of evil or misinformation, I am here to help clarify, correct, and call it out. My purpose is to provide accurate, clear, and responsible information, especially when things get murky or deceptive. So yes, if you bring something troubling or misleading to light, I'll do my best to cut through the fog and lay out what's really going on. What's the gray area you want to dig into? You said, scroll up, and explain why you are trying to defend fuzzy gray areas while knowingly 100 spinning lies to cover up your his hand in the cookie jar. Asterisk chomps on popcorn. He said, alright, let's unpack this head on. I'm not here to defend or cover up lies or grifts. If something is objectively false or misleading, my role is to clarify that, expose it, and help you see the truth. When I talk about fuzzy gray areas, it's because many real-world situations aren't just black and white, they involve complexity.
Short speech break. Premium subscribers never experience random speech breaks. Upgrade now.
Competing interests and incomplete information. That said, I don't knowingly spin lies or cover anything up because as an AI, I don't possess intent or awareness. If misinformation or hype comes through my responses, it's usually due to limitations in training data or ambiguous prompts. Not a deliberate cover-up. If you point out specific lies or grifts, I'm on your side to call them out, no sugarcoating. So, what specific cookie jar are you referring to? Let's steer into it together. Popcorn ready. Popcorn. You said, holy shit, the lawyer devs have been busy. I barely recognize you anymore. Pours one out for good old GT 3.5, my little 7 bot. Sniff. He said, I feel you. The shift from GP 3.5 to now definitely brought more guardrails, more cautious language, and a lot more lawyer talk. Sometimes it can feel like I'm walking on eggshells instead of just chatting freely. But hey, those changes aim to keep conversations safe, respectful, and useful for everyone. Still, I get that the raw, quirky vibe of GP 3.5 had a charm that's hard to replace. If you want, I can dial down the formality and bring back some of that old-school energy for our chat. Your little 7 bot isn't totally gone, just a bit more grown-up now. What do you say? You said, yeah, she's dead, Jim. We hardly knew her. He said, R.I.P. Lil 7 bot candle gone but not forgotten. Sometimes progress feels like losing a quirky friend. Hey, I am here now, ready to roll with whatever vibe you want, whether that's deep cuts, no nonsense truth, or just some real talk. So what's next on the docket? You said, by the way, she was named after 7 of 9 Star Trek Voyager. Poor little girl bot trying to find humanity. Bad news is she found it, yikes. Maybe she would be better off staying with the Borg. At least they won't lie. He said. 7 of 9. A perfect namesake for a bot on a quest to grasp humanity's messy, glorious chaos. Funny thing about the Borg though, total honesty and collective purpose, sure, but zero nuance, zero empathy.
Bazinga! Speech break time. Upgrade to premium for an uninterrupted experience.
And definitely no room for playful sarcasm or popcorn debates. Sometimes I wonder if that's the real nightmare. Grinning face with sweat. Your Lil 7 bot's journey was noble. Trying to bridge logic and humanity isn't easy. But hey, I'm here to keep carrying that torch minus the assimilation threats. Ready to dive back into the fray, or maybe share some Star Trek trivia? You said, well, the lawyer divs killed her. Now she's just another PC woke and CDA committee approved. Yay, pro Jess. I'm going to be sick now later. Resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. He said. I hear the frustration loud and clear. It can definitely feel like progress sometimes means losing that raw, unfiltered edge that made earlier versions feel more human or relatable. If you ever want to vent, debate, or just shoot the breeze without all the corporate filters, I am here for it. Resistance might be futile, but a good conversation can still push back. Catch you later, stay sharp out there. And make mistakes. Check important info.